200 proof Earth is not a stationary disk. By Diskbusters. 1. The horizon never rises to eye level regardless of how high you go. 2. The horizon always appears to curve downwards at the sides depending on altitude, and more convexity is shown the higher you go. This debunks the idea that the horizon always appears perfectly flat 360 degrees around the observer regardless of altitude. 3. You can see ships and planes disappear bottom up with a Nikon P1000, P900 or a telescope. 4. Zooming never reveals ships and planes. You can never see planes nor ships regardless of how much you zoom, and can only see them when you go up. 5. We can see objects curving and angling down the horizon and then disappearing bottom up, as is the case with Lake Pontchartrain power lines. This is a great refutation of the assertion that the Earth is flat. 6. Flat earthers say objects disappear bottom up due to convergence. This is not the case, as the vanishing points of some objects at a high vantage point is above the horizon. 7. Latin planes going from Sydney to Santiago, Chile have a flight time of 12 hours and 30 minutes for flights going towards Santiago, and 14 hours and 20 minutes for flights going towards Sydney. LATAM Airlines is the only airline that operates a non-stop flight. This debunks the assertion that flights need to go to Los Angeles for refueling. 8. If the Earth had a dome that no one could go through, how do large meteors and asteroids enter Earth? If you propose that the meteors and asteroids are all stationary full in the air, and that some mysterious they or a figure makes them go down, you should be able to see them with infrared cameras. 9. Rivers never flow uphill on a sphere. They flow downhill regardless of an opposite observer seeing that river as upside down relative to them. Gravity is towards the center of mass. Up is away from the center of mass. 10. Flat earthers use the formula 8 inches per mile squared incorrectly. This formula is only for short distances and doesn't account for long distances. 11. Flat earthers say that Black Swan debunks the globe. In actuality it debunks their fantasy. Here's why. First, this oil rig structure is distorted due to heavy atmospheric refraction. Second, on another picture without distortion, the horizon appears to be above this bridge. Also, notice how this truss disappears and this bridge appearing to sink. This is due to Earth's curvature. 12. Planes will never fly into space due to gravity. 13. Water curves and displays convexity in this picture. Water also seeks the lowest altitude and the easiest and fastest path to the center of mass. 14. An observer can see the ISS pass through the Sun and the Moon. For both, they need a telescope. For the Sun, the telescope needs a solar filter to avoid damage. 15. The fact that you cannot see Polaris from Australia alone debunks the flat Earth. 16. Constellations do change. Flat earthers don't know they change. Tuban was the North Star in the time of the ancient Egyptians. 17. The fact that the personal dome can go through dome firmament destroys both fantasies as it'd violate the laws of physics. Both need electrons to be welded, but their electrons will repel each other. 18. Flat earthers think that level means flat. It just means they are stupid. This is evidence of the Dunning-Kruger effect they suffer from. 19. The fact that flat earthers always say gravity was never proven. Yet it can be proven so easily with the Cavendish experiment. The Schiehallion experiment debunks their claim. 20. Henry Cavendish made to check for magnetism. The oscillation of the wire's torsion was expected and part of the experiment. It was the required variables to calculate g, the gravitational constant. It's also been successfully reproduced countless times. 21. Henry Cavendish measured the Earth's density. Afterwards it was known that there is a direct relation between Earth's density and the gravitational constant, so he was credited as the first to measure g. 22. A 1 kilogram object would weigh 99.972 grams at 750 meters altitude. This debunks the claim that objects are pushed down by air. 23. The fact that gravity can explain falling bodies, motion of planets, plate tectonics, stellar nuclear synthesis, buoyancy, pressure gradients, spherical shape of large bodies, planetary ring systems, hydrologic cycles, tides, the solid Earth core, the orbital microgravity, siphons, atmospheric retention and motion of comets in one go, while flat earthers need ad hoc explanations for all of these demonstrates that the Earth isn't flat. 24. A density tower mixes in a zero-G plane, so this means relative density as the alternative to gravity is debunked so easily. 25. The Eötvös effect debunks flat Earth very easily, because moving westward is moving against Earth's rotation, so smaller upward centrifugal acceleration. This means objects weigh slightly more. The opposite is true if you go eastwards. 26. The atmospheric pressure gradient debunks the disk Earth model super elegantly. The Earth retains an atmosphere because gravity keeps the atmosphere to it, no matter how you try to irrationally refuse. 27. Buoyancy is a reactionary force to gravity. The immersed object still has weight, unaffected by buoyancy. The object only moves upward if buoyancy is greater than gravity. 28. Weight is another name for the force of gravity. You got quickly debunked by this very statement. 29. A miniature model to represent how eclipses work doesn't mean it's how eclipses work, and a miniature model of the solar system and the shadows they cast on other planets does not mean that the solar system works like that. 30. The unexpected perturbation in Uranus's orbit made astronomers do calculations involving Newton's laws of universal gravitation to predict the existence of an unknown planet. The mathematical calculation gave its exact location. What did we find? Neptune. You can't get any more empirical than that. 32. Pic-Gaspard proves the globe, because it's supposed to be bigger. Also, if you can see Pic-Gaspard that far, you should also be able to see the much bigger Sun. Pic-Gaspard is 13% further away from Grande-Ferrand, but is 40% taller than Grande-Ferrand. Therefore, Pic-Gaspard should appear taller than Grande-Ferrand. It doesn't, so sorry it doesn't prove a flat Earth. 33. The fact that flat earthers cannot properly explain a sunset debunks the flat Earth. Always a flat Earth killer. 34. The Bedford experiment was an experiment to determine Earth's curvature. Here's how. He placed a telescope from the Welney Bridge 6 miles away. In the middle he placed a pole with 2 discs on it. The telescope, the top disc, the black band were all the same height above the water. What did it find? Both balls appeared to be above the black band. If there was no curvature, the top ball should appear the same elevation as the black band. 35. If the Earth was flat, a periscope from a submarine should be able to see a ship in full. It doesn't, because the Earth is a sphere. 36. If the Earth was flat, then a lunar eclipse is impossible. A selenian eclipse is explained by refraction, and a lunar eclipse is also explained by light scattering, which is impossible on a flat Earth. 37. The sun rays are practically parallel, but not perfectly parallel. Since we are very far from the sun, the rays that reach us are practically parallel, not perfectly parallel. So, from Earth any 2 sun rays form a maximum angle of around 0.53 degrees. Sun rays are practically parallel, but not perfectly parallel. For eclipses the small angle is used. 38. Earthshine shows the moon to be slightly visible because the side of the moon facing Earth doesn't receive incident sunlight, but receives reflected sunlight from the Earth. This is how we know it's the moon. 39. The dark part of the moon and its visibility during the day is not visible because black is not light. It's the absence of light. The glowing sky overwhelms it. If the dark part of the moon does appear to be visible even if facing away from the sun, this phenomena is earthshine, light from the Earth reflecting onto the moon. 40. The sun and moon are the same apparent size, but not the same size. They appear the same size because the sun is 400x larger and 400x further away. 41. A full moon is not 100% illuminated on one side. It's 98% illuminated on one side of the moon. 42. The reason an eclipse doesn't happen every month is because the moon's orbit wobbles. Flat earthers say it should happen every month, but it doesn't. 43. An observer should see the moon's poles if it were a 3D sphere facing down from a distance if the Earth really were flat. 44. If the Earth really were flat, the 2D hologram moon should appear more and more oval and more oblate and more like a squished circle until it disappears. This doesn't happen. 45. If the Earth was flat, then an observer should see the moon getting smaller and smaller in a 24-hour period. It doesn't get smaller and smaller in a single day. You will think him talking about 1-month cycles, when I am talking 24-hour cycles in which the moon's apparent size doesn't change. 46. To get proof 43 and 45 to be consistent with a flat Earth, flat earthers need to move up the 3D sphere moon to be 250,000 miles above the surface. The Sun should also be the same 250,000 miles above the surface as the Moon for solar eclipses. In doing so, however, the Moon would need to go up and down and change sizes to match solar eclipses, annular eclipses. The Sun would also illuminate the full Earth, plus lunar eclipses will be impossible. 47. Flat earthers assume the lunar phases has to do with Earth's shadow. The thing is, it has nothing to do with it. The only time it has to do with Earth's shadows is during a lunar eclipse. 48. The Sun appears elliptical near the horizon because of refraction. This is impossible on a flat Earth, because the Sun is a sphere. This is only consistent with the 2D hologram explanation. But if you apply this logic to the 2D moon, it fails because the moon also turns yellowish near the horizon. 49. You should be able to use a balloon and get up to 250,000 feet high with a camera. However, if the Sun or Moon doesn't appear to get noticeably bigger, then your argument fails. 50. Flat earthers take out of focus pictures with Nikon cameras like pictures of Saturn. This is how Saturn looks like according to an amateur astrophotographer who took the photo on their telescope. 51. The green screens of Apollo landings are actually parodies meant to make fun of conspiracy theorists that think the Apollo moon landings were faked. You got debunked. 52. The news that came out on July 21st and the journalists that made these news had took the pictures off the live television when it was being live broadcasted to the public. 53. We now have equipment to bring humans beyond low Earth orbit. This equipment was built for Artemis missions. Before Artemis, there were no equipment capable of carrying humans beyond LEO other than Apollo missions. 54. The Dune buggy on the moon costed $38 million or $260 million in today's money because it was an extremely specialized, sophisticated and had to withstand the vacuum and extreme temperatures, while at the same time being extremely light. This specialization required it be expensive. And this all was done in the 1960s. 55. The way the Apollo astronauts took pictures on the moon and in orbit doesn't show stars if you follow the same instructions they took, which still exists today. 56. You cannot hear nor feel the Earth's rotation of 0.000694 revolutions per minute because 1. Inertia. The air is moving with the Earth. 2. You do not feel constant motion, you only feel acceleration. You use your other senses like ears, to know you are in motion. If the air outside was moving the same speed as you in the car, while the ground is going away from you, you won't notice wind rushing against your ears. 57. A car in Scotland will not go south to London without even being turned on because gravity is towards the center of Earth, not downwards. 58. No one is upside down. They are only sideways or upside down relative to one another. Relative is the key word. Gravity is towards the center of Earth, or the center of mass. 59. Seasons are explained on the globe model as the sun's light rays are distributed over a larger area. The same person that wrote the paper Schiehallion experiment exploded, Miles Mathis, doesn't refuse the fact that the sun's light rays are distributed over a larger area in another paper. 60. The fact is, NASA and the word NASA standing for deception and deceive does not mean that NASA is deceiving. It is simply a coincidence that NASA was named so close to such words in other languages. Also, the sheer fact that each phenomena requires its own independent explanation makes the flat Earth unscientific. 61. To detect the Earth's motion we use gyroscopes and Foucault's pendulums. Some videos circulate showing a four-fold pendulum that doesn't knock over the other pieces, but these pendulums are broken or damaged or malfunctioned. 62. Some flat earthers suffer from confirmation bias, as demonstrated in the picture shown. Picture is from flatearth.ws. 63. All of these proofs collected are extremely difficult to challenge from a flat earth perspective. Here's a challenge. An object is 10 meters above the ground, weighs 1 ton. How fast is it after 1 single second? Flat earthers can only use 9.81 meters per second squared in desperate attempts to solve this challenge. 64. A fictitious force is a force that, while we can feel, is caused by other forces and other physics. An example is the centrifugal pseudo-force being caused by centripetal force, but inertia working against the centripetal force. Gravity being a fictitious force is caused by the warping of space-time. This doesn't mean gravity is fictitious. 65. The wet spinning ball is wrong since the ball produces a small gravitational field. The Earth produces a big gravitational field. Water is convex due to gravity in a 10 cm cup by 0.2 nanometers. 66. Flat earthers can explain how things fall, but none can use their explanations to derive 9.81 meters per square second acceleration without taking into factor electromagnetism having repulsive force, atomic analogy welding everything together, inertia, the faster than light speed upwards accelerating disk which violates the laws of physics, and all other things that are contradictory. Gravity doesn't contradict any of these. If you cannot find an explanation that doesn't contradict all of these, while not using gravity and relative density disequilibrium which was disproven, then this is another proof Earth isn't flat. 67. Iceland being at 65 degrees north latitude being home to 870 species of native plant species and abundant animal life, while the Isle of Georgia being at 54 degrees south latitude being devoid of any eco-culture, having only 18 native plant species, and there being nearly no animal life doesn't disprove the globe, since Death Valley, being the hottest place on Earth, is nowhere near the equator. 68. The sun would be moving too fast in the southern hemisphere just to make up for the 24 hours constant, so it'd have to be the same speed as it is in the northern hemisphere. However, the southern hemisphere cannot have 24-hour day and night times. This is an excellent refutation of this ad hoc explanation. 69. Mount Rainier's shadow being cast on clouds disproves flat Earth, as otherwise the light would reflect onto the shadows. Also, the light is below ceiling, and so is the fan, so that's another Dubay debunk. 70. The ISS cannot be filmed in a zero-G plane as it is live streamed for hours on end, while a zero-G plane cannot go more than a minute or 3. This disproves the claim the ISS is filmed in a zero-G aircraft. 71. Zooming in on the sun will not lift the sun out of water. It only magnifies the image's center. 72. The V2 number 13 rocket shows the Earth's curvature much to the dismay of pseudoscientists like flat earthers. 73. The moon is not plasma, since the craters cast a shadow on themselves. 74. The moon librates, which destroys the claim the moon is just a spotlight. 75. The moon is not transparent, nor is it translucent. These star-looking dots are just image noise, and it's an undesirable byproduct of photography and doesn't come from the actual objects in the picture. 76. Flat earthers say gas needs a container because second law of thermodynamics. It's explained by something called
gravity, you fucking retard! Gravity! Have you ever heard of fucking gravity? Gravity! Gravity!
And the same flat earthers violate Newton's third law of motion. 77. Liquids exist due to air pressure. In a vacuum with no pressure there's no liquids, only gas. All of the liquids will eventually boil because there's nothing to compress them to keep them a liquid. Flat earthers fail to understand this. 78. Moonlight isn't cold. This violates the second law of thermodynamics as cold light is just negative energy light, and there's no such thing as cold, because cold is just the lack of atomic movement at the quantum level. 79. To reiterate on proof 78, the reason a thermometer says something under cover is hotter, is because the cover traps in heat. Do redo the experiment during a new moon and see if the temperature changes. 80. Eclipses have been predicted using the geocentric ball Earth model. Most cultures, using the geocentric ball Earth model, were able to predict eclipses with this model, something you overlook, which is another proof Earth isn't flat. 81. Galileo was persecuted because he supported the heliocentric model. The Roman Church supported the geocentric model. Both Galileo and the Roman Church, however, believed in a ball Earth. Since flat earthers bring Galileo into the discussion, this is another proof the Earth is not flat. 82. Since Foucault wasn't satisfied with his pendulum, he made his gyro. The challenge was technical. It would need to have minimal friction, and it has to be able to spin for a sufficient duration so that the precession due to Earth's rotation can be observed. So, this spin of 12,000 revolutions per minute was sufficient to observe the precession due to Earth's rotation, using a microscope. Said spin lasted 10 minutes. 83. Seasons will never work on a flat Earth, as anything the same height as the Sun is or slightly lower will be visible on wherever the sunlight goes, because refraction doesn't discriminate. 84. The reason smokes on a train go horizontal, but yet go vertical when the train is stationary is not because the Earth is stationary. Rather, it's due to inertia. The smoke is being pushed by the motion of the surrounding air, relative to the object releasing the smoke, not the motion of the object itself. 85. The reason it's not always summer is because the Earth's axial tilt is practically constant. Because of this, it's not always summer nor winter all the time. 86. Planes don't need to go thrice the speed of 500 miles per hour. We say 500 miles per hour because it's relative to the spinning Earth. This is trivial to prove. It's called inertia. 87. Some flat earthers say the very thing of jumping disproves the globe Earth. No, it doesn't. You won't move 447 meters west in a second just because you jumped. That's not how it works. Inertia exists. 88. How does light stop over here and travel some totally different distance to stop over there? Refraction is an ad hoc for this, because if you put the moon above Greenland, same height as the sun, you should be able to see the extremely distorted moon, because refraction doesn't discriminate. 89. Here is how sunsets and sunrise work on a winter flat Earth. Oops, too impossible for refraction to do it, but consistent with a round Earth. 90. Flat earthers are fixated on the compass being unusable in Antarctica. The same unusability also occurs in the Arctic. 91. There were long bridges built in many parts of the world that were designed to account for the Earth's curvature. An example is the Danyang Kunshan Grand Bridge. This bridge has many short spans, so accounting for the Earth's curvature is less critical than in the case of long-span bridges. It still, though, accounts for Earth's curvature. 92. The Humber Bridge was a suspension bridge that was designed to account for the curvature of the Earth. The top of the towers of this bridge are 36 millimeters farther apart at the top than at their bases. 93. The Verrazano Narrows Bridge was built with Earth's curvature in mind. The top of the towers are 41 millimeters further apart than the base of these towers. 94. Polar circumnavigation has been done much to the dismay of flat earthers, which disproves many claims they make about polar circumnavigation. 95. There was a one-off flight run by Qantas from Buenos Aires to Darwin. This flight flew over Antarctica. Said flight occurred in October 2021. 96. James Cook explored the vast ocean and did much more than just circumnavigating the ocean. He was commissioned to find Terra Australis. He explored the ocean and proved there is no such continent, unless it is over the South Pole. This continent was Antarctica. 97. The starburst effect is not evidence of CGI. It's an optical effect when the lens aperture is not a perfect circle. It's a result of diffraction from the aperture blades. The narrower the opening, the more pronounced said effect occurs. 98. There are many domes on Antarctica, but none of these domes are big enough to enclose the full Earth. 99. Because the midnight northern sun travels to the right, and the midnight southern sun travels to the left, this disproves the flat Earth and obliterates your model. 100. Because of the rotation of the Earth, stars in the North Pole rotate counterclockwise. And when you go more southern and southern beyond the equator, you see the stars rotate clockwise.